This is the Perfect RIA, in case you didn't know. Bringing you all the strategies to help your business grow. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Sit back and listen in while you feel the beat, yeah!
If you have less than 250 clients, I hope you're taking a lot of time out of work or prospecting like a maniac.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your host, Micah, and with me, as usual, the legendary Matthew Jarvis. What's going on, bud?
Oh, Micah, I'm just living the dream. I'm up in Washington this week at my office doing a week of mini-surge with the team development day. So it's always good to be here in person to see clients and to help the team out. So really excited.
It is, right? It's again about being intentional, being about focused in your day. What things are you going to do? What things are you going to achieve? And it's constant help with the team, right? Even though we have dispersed workforce or displaced workforce, depending on how you want to say that. But it's the aspect of saying at some point, we got to have dedicated time with our teams to help them grow. So kudos to you making that work.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. Of course, you and I just recently came back from hosting our Invictus Mastermind, which is always transformative. We attended our personal mastermind, which was also part of the Berkshire Hathaway annual shareholder meeting, which was a lot of fun to see Charlie and Warren still going at it in their 90s. But a theme came up, Micah, during those two masterminds, and then in some news articles that come out after that about there's some sort of theoretical limit. Some people even call it a law of how many clients an advisor can serve. Now, the first person that mentioned this to us said that 50 clients, that according to Dunbar's number, which we'll talk about in a minute, you can only serve 50 clients if you're doing real financial planning. And then some industry commentator who doesn't appear to have ever had a practice said that no, if you're going to provide real retirement planning, didn't say family wealth office, he said retirement planning, you can only handle 25 clients per financial advisor. So Micah, my mind is blown here at even the suggestion of these numbers.
Well, step one, you need to fire about 75% of your clients plus is what I heard. So hopefully, Jarvis, by the end of this podcast, you're going to understand that you should only have 25 clients, and then you should promptly write a letter to all of the excess clients you have and let them know that. That'd be great. I would say...
Yeah, I don't know what I would do tomorrow then. Like if I got down to what do I do tomorrow? I mean, tomorrow, that's hyperbole. What would I do next week? Like right. I would see all my clients in 1 week. Even if I wanted to see them quarterly, let's go 25 clients. I wanted to see every single client quarterly. So I need 1 week a quarter. That's 4 weeks a year. Let's say it takes me an extra full week. So we're at 8 weeks a year. Let's call it 10 weeks. What am I doing with the other 40 weeks a year if I have 25 clients?
No, and this becomes something I want to pull out a little thread that you just said is, and this is one of the things that I want to caution our audience. Now, great news, our audience is already fantastic, so it won't be an issue, about when you know someone's about to be a clown as an advisor, right? One of the ways that we instantly see this is when they say, hey, I can only work with X amount of clients, and then they throw the because Jeez. I provide more service than any other advisor does. So let's just be clear in what that narcissistic comment is. That means in the group of advisors you're in, of which you probably haven't surveyed, you probably haven't gone through, you probably haven't worked through their process, what they have, you think your process is so far superior and 100 times more work than every advisor out there. You need to take a hard pause and look at yourself. You got some issues going on there, bud, as to why you think that's the case that's there. Now, every time that's happened and that's come out in a mastermind, that's come out in things, we have sat down and had them go first and write down all of their process. I'll actually do it at the same time. I'll write down my full process going through it. And what we find at the end of the day, the statement they made is not accurate because guess what? We all have the same tool set. Sure, we use our tools differently, but if the reason you were saying that I can only have 25 clients, I can only have 50 clients, this guy provide more service than any other financial advisor, you are lying to yourself.
Yeah, short of... there might be somebody listening here who's doing ultra high net worth, complex, I'm talking like $100 million family office stuff, in which case, this is not who we're talking to, right? If you're running a family office, but again, if you're actually running a family office, Micah, this is the other thing we run into. They say, well, what if? It's nope. So you start with what ifs, we're done. Well, what fee schedule, this came up, what fee schedule would you recommend for a client with $20 million? How many clients do you have with $20 million? None. I recommend no fee schedule. When you get that client, that prospect, let's talk about it. Until then, get to work.
That's the really big thing here is it's the get to work, right? So one of the things that we run into so frequently, and this happened again at another advisor we were chatting with, going through stuff, and our offices, client-wise, were fairly similar. We had more clients and households we work with than him, but our team size were pretty close. And he came back to me and was like, hey, my team is overworked. They have way too much stuff to do. There's all of these things that they get done. I need to bring on more team members. And I was like, hard stop. The last thing you need to do is more team members. And he's like, no. He's like, look at how many clients we have. And we walked him through a time exercise, right, of how much time it actually takes to service a client. And this is another area that we lie to ourselves, Jarvis, as advisors, is we think it takes more time, or we make it take more time than it needs to take. And it's not because it's delivering more value at the end of the day. And again, we've gone through this exercise with a whole bunch of people, right? And it's really taking that honest look about how much time does it take, and am I being hyper intentional about my time? Now, if you come to me and says, hey, look, Micah, I'm in a position in my life that I'm going to do A, B, and C, and I'm going to have 50 clients, and this is the reason I'm going to have 50 clients, I'm going to be hyper intentional, and it meets all of my goals, well, then I'm going to step back and say, kudos to you. I mean, rock on. It's fantastic. But Jarvis, so often I run into people that says, hey, Micah, it's just a simple math equation, right? It's very simple, saying, hey, I need the answer to be 5. One of my variables is 3. I'm looking for my other variable. I think I'm going to put 6 in there. 2, 1, 4,
8,
like what does that work? This is a simple math equation. How much revenue do you want to make? How much time do you want to work? And that's equals how many clients you have. That's it.
Yeah. This like so many head trashes, excuses, stories we tell ourselves, lies we tell ourselves, if we're being really honest. We use this, and I think a lot of this comes subconsciously, Micah. We use this to justify our own lack of success. Hey, I would make the kind of money that Matt and Micah make, but I provide real service. Well, what does that mean? By the way, if you're providing more value to your clients than either Micah and I are, we'll pay for your time. We just, this last week when we were at our mastermind, we paid $5,000 for 2 hours of a gentleman's time to figure out how he was delivering value to his clients. I will do that all day long because I want to learn. And again, I know that people might say, well, this is a bit hypocritical. Here you guys are on your soapbox. We are endless students of the game. If somebody comes and they say, hey, we objectively have a better way to serve clients, whatever your check is, I'll write it. Whatever your fee is, I'll write it because I need to learn that. I would never say I'm at the max of what client value could be. There's always more to be had.
Yeah, there's always more, right? This is a thing about pushing yourself. And again, if you think that you've plateaued, this goes back to when the patent office closed, right? Remember when the patent, we don't remember, right? But we read about it when the patent office was closed in the early 1900s because everything that was invented had already been invented. So that's the same mindset that you're taking. If you're not pushing yourself to development, what you're saying is, hey, whatever's been invented, whatever I know now is the best that it can ever be. And there's no reason I should make any improvements. There's no reason I should make any changes. That's a crazy statement. We always need to be pushing things. We always need to be testing things. And if you do it for no other reason than just to deliver value to your clients, that's a win.
Something I always like to do, Micah, when I feel like I'm up against a wall is ask myself, where did that wall come from? Right. And we've talked famously about, what was it, the 4-minute mile, the 5-minute mile. I can't remember what it was. With the Wright brothers taking flight. Right. Where do I say that there's this hard wall here? Where did that wall come from? Right. Like advisor fees have to be 1%. Where did that come from? Really, it just came from, that's easy math. That's really where it came from. Or this idea of Dunbar's number that you can only have 150 relationships. By the way, Dunbar just made up that number before the internet existed. And people have gone back and looked at that, Mike, and they said it was largely because of the maximum nutrition a group could acquire. That once a group got beyond 150 people, they would max out the natural resources of their constrained area, historically speaking.
Right.
So it wasn't like they ran out of people to be friends with. They were starving to death
They didn't have
after
food.
150. So I guess if your clients are starving to death, we probably need to have a discussion. Short of that, you really need to look and say, why have I told myself that this is the wall when it's in fact just a made up thing?
That's a really good question, right? It's about questioning these numbers. And I want to go back to one of our core tenets of TPR, which is being intentional. Are you being intentional with your time? This is really where it comes down to. And are we making an active decision? No, it's okay to say, hey, look, I'm only going to bring on 15 clients this year.
Yes.
As long as that math equals to it ending in your goals, right? If you're achieving your goals and that's how much clients you want to bring on, then rock on. There's no problem with that. Where we come up with issues, people say, hey, I'm at capacity with my 25 clients. I don't have any time for anything else, and I'm not meeting any of my revenue goals. You're like, whoa, how are you at capacity? Are you doing like 25 a day? Because that's impressive. But 25 a year, you got nothing else going on in your life.
Yeah, and we have to remember, this goes to the example you shared, this impacts our team as well. For whatever reason, we're all drawn to, if my team says they're at capacity, what we need to do is hire another person. This seems to be the go-to. In fact, I see this with advisors. Micah, you and I have talked about this. You know what I need, Micah? My practice isn't growing. I need a junior advisor. No, you are the junior advisor, right? Like I'm at $300,000 in revenue, and I'm not growing, and I'm busy all the time. I need a junior advisor. No. Back to your example, Micah. The numbers don't pencil out on that. So you need to step out of that emotional space of here's what I want, here's what I need, here's what I should do. What are the numbers telling me?
Now, Jarvis, let's dive into this a little bit. Like, why
please.
do we choose not to step out of that space? Why do we want to hire someone else? Because it feels like that's the easy button. It feels like, hey, if I could throw money at this and I could hit an easy button, all of a sudden my problems will go away. Well, if you haven't grown a team yet and you're in the process of it, or if you have grown a team, you're going to know this. Hiring people does not make your problems go away. It can change them, right? It causes more problems in a shorter term because you got to train them. You got to get up to speed. There's a lot of other things you have to do. As your team grows, it has different types of issues that you have to grow with. So it can absolutely be worth it, but it's not a magic pill. It's not a magic button we get to throw money at that makes the problems go away. Number one, if you are not setting the standards for success in your office, then your team is. That is a huge point right there. Who is setting the standards for success in your office, and how are you continually crushing that?
Micah, something I did with my team a few years ago, we were having a team retreat, and the team said, hey, we absolutely need to add another team member. Which I have some aversion to that, right? To your point, it seems like it's a way to just kind of throw money at problems. So I took a step back. I said, let's do some numbers. Let's look back when it was just Colleen and myself. How many clients did we serve before we hired a third person? And and how much revenue were we serving? We started doing the math on that. And we say, hey, listen, our team is way less efficient today than it was 5 years ago. Once we get to that same level of efficiency, I will be glad to talk about a team member. But again, Micah, to your point, it went back to let's add up the numbers. Not how busy do we feel,
right?
Not what do we feel like doing. What do the numbers tell us?
You know, it's a hard thing to get out of the shopkeeper mentality that we have, right? Team members can easily have this. They're paid from 8 to 5 or whatever that schedule is. They feel like they need to be there. Therefore, they feel like in order to, and I think this is a very subconscious thought. I don't think it's on the active brain, but I think on the subconscious thought is, hey, if I'm not busy all day, then my job's in jeopardy. If I'm not working the entire time, they're going to fire me and get rid of me. So even if their job doesn't take a full 8 hours, they will turn it into a full 8 hours because they want to keep their job. Right? So you could chalk this up to a bad leadership standpoint, and we haven't created an environment for that, but also it's a little inherent in kind of how they were brought up and raised this entire time. So it's not something easy to fix overnight. So again, your team is always going to be busy. Do you have them working on the right things?
Yeah, that's a great point. We always need to step back and say, how much busy work am I creating for my team? Here's a quick example. We met an advisor in our personal mastermind. He runs a custom portfolio for every single client. For every single client, they're doing the allocations different. Now, if we pulled back the math, what that means is that they're 99.5% the same, but you're being lazy on a bunch of them. That any variation in the portfolio is really just laziness. And there's this huge, by the way, Mike, in my mind, this huge ethical and moral dilemma, which is if you found some great investment you're giving to Bob and Sue, why didn't you take time to go back and put it in all the other client accounts? So there's some real issues here. But by virtue of doing this, by virtue of saying, hey, I'm going to provide customized advice, I'm using air quotes big time, he's created an enormous amount of work for himself, for his team. He's created an enormous amount of liability across his client base. And he's coming to say, hey, I need to hire someone full-time just to manage these portfolios. That is an option. Or you could find 1 or 2 models that work, adjust it for risk tolerance, and do that across the board and save dozens, hundreds of hours a year.
And I'm going to add tremendously more value, right? This isn't a case where he was doing covered call options on highly concentrated positions, right? It was not the case. This was it was kind of like more what I feel like. I'm going to create a custom model. And that creates a huge liability issue and a management issue. So I think portfolio allocation is a great time that advisors spend way too much time wasting time. Jarvis, I would say another one with that, another one I got is a comment from the advisor the other day was, Micah, trades are killing me. And I said, interesting. What does that mean? Well, a client calls in and they need money and we have to make trades for them. I'm like, okay, well, how often is this happening? Well, in his mind, it's happening all the time.
This is a great example, yeah.
Okay, but we don't actually have the data on it. But then I was like, great, what's your process for when a client needs money? And they have no process. And so every time a client calls in and needs money in a retirement account, they have to free up cash. Why don't you just have cash available? Well, Micah, that would be a drag. Well, you haven't invested in a stock. And if the stock market drops 20%, I don't know, like a normal year, right? This isn't an abnormal thing. Then it's going to drop 20% and the client needs the money. That doesn't seem like a great plan to me that's there, right? Like what's your investment philosophy and kind of working through? So, I mean, it could be as simple as holding more cash in a portfolio because a client is going to need it. Now, you may be thinking when you're listening to podcasts, of course, that makes a lot of sense. Do you actually do it in your practice? Because we run into advisors all the time that it's a theory, but they don't have it implemented.
Yeah, and by the way, maybe you have this one dialed in. Maybe you're like, boy, our cash game is solid, and we have it set aside, and we have buckets of cash. We have all these things in place. You have some other blind spot. And this is something, and by the way, Micah, you and I also have these blind spots, which is why we're always constantly seeking out other experts, people who, not experts, people who have done it to consult with us. But when we meet with advisors, when we coach them in our masterminds, we're always finding six figures, multiple six figures of opportunities to improve the practice. And they're just things we become blind to. We see them so often, we think that's just how it has to be. I have to do custom models. I have to trade cash all the time. I have to have custom case prep for every client. I have to see people on Friday nights. Whatever it is, we get stuck in this mindset of the way I did it, which I came to by accident, is the way it has to be.
You know, one of those things about seeing clients on Friday afternoon. So sometimes every now and again, my team will come up and want an exception for a client meeting. And I say, hey guys, I know that we have these weird rules in place. Here's another weird rule I really need you just not to even ask me, but just to make sure the exception doesn't even come across my table, just so I don't say yes to it. I don't do meetings on Sunday morning at 2 a.m. They do that. They laugh, right? They laugh. They're like, well, of course you don't. And I'm like, well, it's the same thing, right? This is time dedicated to make sure we're taking care of our clients. And if you book stuff in there, you're robbing that other thing. Right. So there's some very clear guidelines that we need to set up. So Jarvis, I love that concept about your blind spots, right? Where are your blind spots and how to do it? One great way to do that is to write down, and again, you know, I want evidence, I don't want opinions.
Yes.
Write down every time your team comes to you, what questions are they asking? And an easy example of this in our office years ago was every time a client needed money from a retirement account, we had the cash available, but the team would stop and they would come to me and ask about taxes. You know, how much taxes to withhold, right? And I'd have to like reevaluate this every time. And I finally sat there and stopped and was like, hold on a second. I was like, this doesn't make any sense why they can't answer that question. And so I started talking with the operations people, but they felt it was giving advice to recommend tax withholdings. I said, aha, let's come out with it. I'll make the advice recommendation for all of our clients. All of our clients, you withhold at their marginal tax rate on distributions. So when we get their tax return every single year, guess what? We put that information into the CRM. We have their marginal tax rate. If a client needs money, it is my recommendation, which this is my recommendation, to withhold at their marginal tax rate, not their effective tax rate. I don't want an underpayment issue I have to deal with later, right? I want to withhold at their marginal tax rate. If a client doesn't want that, then it gets escalated to the advisor, and the advisor can have a conversation with the client about that on the tax withholdings. And Jarvis, this eliminated like 98% of the questions I came in with taxes, but now the team feels great because they don't have to get a hold of me, get an answer on taxes, then follow up with the client. They can immediately answer the client's question. Great news. Micah has reviewed this and he recommends you withhold 22% for taxes to make sure you're not short at the end of the year. Is that going to be okay with you?
Micah, let's do some quick math on that. So prior to having that system in place, a client would call, they would ask for a distribution. So let's say you have 150 clients. And let's just make
it downsizing my clients. Sorry.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Let's say you have 150 clients, because I want people to see the impact of this, right? So they go and advisors will say, well, hey, the reason you can take all this time out of office is you're not serving your clients. No, the reason that we can take all this time out of the office is we're so efficient. Let's use this as an example. So let's say 150 clients, just for fun, let's say they're only calling in once a year for distributions. I think that would be on the low side for retirement practice, but let's call it once a year. So you're going to have 150 requests a year for distributions. If each one of those came to you for a tax question and it took you only 10 minutes, which you're sharp, Micah, but still, if you don't have this in your CM, you got to pull the tax return out. You got to think about it. What other distributions have they taken this year? What did we do last time? What were their meeting preferences? Let's say it just takes 10 minutes. And I think that's on the low side. So that's 150 minutes. What is that? 10 hours, 12 hours of time. So you saved basically 2 days of time.
I think it's 150 clients times 10. That's 1,500. And then, so that's 25 hours, give or take. 1,500 minutes is 25 hours of time.
Yeah. So 25 hours of time. Thank you for catching my math. That's why I don't do math in front of clients. 25 hours of time on that one thing. Yep. That one task, which we've talked about. Let's say an average client takes 5 hours a year of time, even if it takes 10 hours, that's 2.5 new clients you have capacity for just by not manually figuring out what the tax withholding is.
And Jarvis, I'm going to add to this if I may, because my team got the phone call. They then had to get the information. They then had to get it to me. So let's say it just took them 10 minutes to get me that task, that information, et cetera. Took me 10 minutes to review it. Then it took them 10 minutes to call the client back and set the distribution up. Now we've just tripled this number. right? So now it's gone from 25 hours. Now it's at 75 hours just to communicate that aspect of it. And now we've empowered the team within the process of their distribution. They can answer this question within 30 seconds. So we went from 75 hours to handle this to 30 seconds per client, which is just amazing.
Well, the cost gets even higher. I feel like this is its own episode on its own, because in that 75-hour numbers also mean that it likely took several days to get the clients
that's true.
taken care of, right? Because I got to talk to Micah. He's not available. Maybe it gets forgotten, right? All these steps increase the risk that it gets forgotten. So we have this relationship capital issue. And then we also have what Evan Carmichael, who we hired the other day, calls the switching tax. The tax on every time you switch tasks. And there's been a lot of document on this, a lot of evidence on this, but let's say that doubles the number. Whatever you were working on got interrupted. It's going to take you a few minutes to get on back to it. You're going to decide in the interim to read the Wall Street Journal or check ChatGPT or LinkedIn or whatever the case may be. So it's not without reason to say that we're talking about 150 to 300 hours of productivity is lost by not just having the marginal rate put into your CRM. 300 hours. That's almost like, that's an entire surge cycle in almost an hours. This is insane.
Yeah, and that's one thing. That's one thing in your process that we had a blind spot on for years until we're like, because it was the way it always happened, right? Yes. It happened one at a time, and all of these things come up. So a great pro tip on this is to make sure you're setting up and you have scheduled meetings with your team to go over all their list of questions. I don't want to be peppered in chat or text or in person or any other medium with non-emergency questions throughout the week. Everything needs to live in one document. Why? Now I can group questions together. Now I can see the like kind things that things are coming up and then, this needs to be a process, right? When I'm just pinged kind of randomly as these things come up, I just answer them randomly. I'm not thinking about the bigger picture.
Like a couple other places where this mindset comes out, I'm just going to call it a scarcity mindset in general. Anywhere you say that there's a limitation that you don't have hard evidence for. Yes. The amount of time something takes, the amount of service a client can deliver, the meeting frequency, the fees. We talked the other day, an advisor said, well, hey, there's no way you can justify charging more than $40,000 a year in fees. We got a good friend who charges $92,000 a year on certain clients. We can't do that. So here's the problem. Why can't he? Unless this was the 11th commandment issued by God to Moses, and I didn't notice this on the back of the 10 commandments. This isn't like some hard law of science, right? So before you tell yourself, hey, that can't be done, you need to step back and say, well, why do I think that way? Now you may choose, like I choose to never have meetings on Fridays. That's just my choice. It's an intentional decision I've made on how my weeks work. But I would never say, hey, Micah, you can't have meetings on Friday, because you'll be like, I have meetings on Friday every surge cycle. I don't know why you can't the other way, right? So we just need to watch that mindset. Anytime, again, we see this law, this rule, whatever, is that real? And who is successfully doing it on the other side?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Who's successfully doing the other side is such that great question that's right there, right? How do we kind of build this up and go there? Then now the next question is like, who is doing it? Great. How do they do that? What value are they offering, right? 9 times out of 10, all of these issues we run across with advisors, all head trash. Right? It's all between your own ears. Maybe it's expectations you set up with your clients, it's expectations you set up with your team, but it all resides in your head trash. Great news is you can fix that. It's not easy, hence to not being a lazy advisor, right? It actually does take work to do these things and to get it changed, and hard work, quite frankly. But these are things that we need to do, get in place so you can add more value to your clients.
Micah, let's come back around to this how many clients an advisor can have. Now, I don't think there is actually, like somewhere out there, there's a theoretical limit. I don't even care to speculate what that number is, but I want to go back. You had mentioned like, hey, let's just look at this as a basic math equation. Now, there are a lot of levers you could pull in a practice, but there are basically a number of meetings you want to have, average revenue of client, and number of clients you have. Like that's pretty much the ratio. And you can pull 2 of those 3 levers and it will dictate the third one, right? And I know, Micah, you're really good at looking at this. How many weeks of surge do I want to have? Yep. And then it starts to dictate what those other 2 numbers are.
So I would first start off with, what are you solving for, right? Is the question in the math. Are we solving for revenue? Are we solving for time? Are we solving for clients, right? Just for a simple discussion here. Let's say we're solving for time. Great. I want to have a surge cycle that's only 4 weeks. Okay, well, fantastic. So I got 4 weeks. Then the next question is, how many clients do I see in a surge cycle? Okay, well, I know my clients, I see roughly 30 clients per week. Well, 30 times 4 is 120. Okay, Well, real simple math goes right here. If I want to have a surge cycle that's only 4 weeks long and I want to see 30 clients per week in surge, guess what? That means I'm going to have 120 households, right? Now, does this mean I can't have more? No, I can absolutely have more. For those variables that I said, 4 week in surge, 30 minutes per week, that's it. It's 120. That's how it works. Now, I want to see the clients twice a year. Great news. I get to pick 4 weeks in spring, 4 weeks in fall, and that's how I need to see everything and have it come together for 120 households. Now, if I wanted to back into that another way, Jarvis, and says, okay, great, I'm solving for revenue, right? Let's say I want to solve to gross $1 million a year because everybody likes that 7-figure number. Well, then fantastic. I would take that $1 million a year, and then I would look at it. This is, I think, where advisors go wrong. They, number one, look at it and say, well, how many ideal clients would I need to get there? Well, every client's going to pay me $100,000 a year, so I only need 10 and I'm there. Yes. How many of those do you have? Zero. What's your average client paying now? $4,000. Okay, so you're not even close. You're not even close to that $100,000. So take your average client revenue. Again, I don't want your opinion on your average client revenue. I want to see the math. Pull your last quarterly billing statement, get them by households, and we, sum them up and divide. That's about as complex as it needs to be. What's your average billing? If you don't know what that is easily, look at your gross for last year. What was your gross in 2022? And then divide it by the number of households that you have. That's it. That's your average revenue per client. So let's say your average revenue is $4,000 per household. Okay, well then the way this would work is you'd say, all right, I want to make $1 million. And this is where we should have pre-gamed it because I can't do that math in my head. Sorry about that, folks. We need to have, 250 clients. If I had 250 households at $4,000 a piece, I'm going to be getting $1 million in gross revenue. Okay, that's another way to cycle that. So what I could go back to my math and saying, hey, if I want to do 30 clients a week, now I need an 8-week surge. If I had an 8-week surge versus a 4-week surge, now I'm seeing 240 households in that period of time. So again, I can be really intentional about this and say, hey, 8 weeks in the spring, 8 weeks in the fall, that's the time that I need to work. And I can see 240 households, and that'll get me on an average revenue rate of over $1 million, right? So again, a couple of levers and we can quickly find out. Now, Jarvis, when I went through this math, when did I go over 52 weeks a year, by the way, in either one of those examples?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I heard 16 weeks. And even if we double that number, let's say you have to spend an extra hour with each client in between, you guys still were at 32 weeks? There's still 22 weeks missing from the year?
Right.
Unaccounted for in that scenario?
So at best, you're 7-8 months maximum that you can have accountable time that we can find in an advisor's office for doing north of 7 figures with 250 households, right? And again, these are oversimplistic examples. There's a lot of ways that you can dial in these numbers, but it's about being intentional with them.
Yeah, it really is. And I think, Mike, as we kind of get to the conclusion of this episode, it speaks to me again about the importance of spending your time with advisors that have the practice that you want, not advisors that are standing around making excuses for the practice they don't have, right? So there's so much power that comes. This is transformative in my life. I know in your life, Mike, as well. Introduce me to an advisor who's doing something I'm not doing. That's who I want to spend my time with. I do not want to spend my time with people that are saying, hey, capacity is 25 clients, capacity is 50 clients. Now, if somebody, again, to our point earlier, says, hey, I only want to serve 50 clients and my practice is still running profitably and I'm taking a lot of time out of office, great, go in peace, be intentional, but don't tell me 50 is the limit. Don't tell me any number is the limit ever. I don't want to be around people that say like there's this limit. I always want to be testing that, saying, hey, I feel like this might be the limit. Where am I missing it? Where's my math off here?
Now, to throw it out there, right, if you see us kind of at a conference or whatnot and you want to hit us up, say, hey, I got a different twist on this, then pull us aside. We'd love to hear that opinion. And I'm not going to be super confrontational about it. Really would love to see kind of how to advance this. If you are stuck in the mindset of, man, I can only have 50 clients and you can hear this other stuff, but you can't get out of it, great news. Let's chat. Let's push this, right? Let's get you out of that mental head trash. There's things that you can do to move you out of that because we all get in that. We all get in some aspect that I am locked onto this belief as if it's the 11th commandment and it's not, and everybody else can see it but me. How do I move off of that path?
I love it. Well, Micah, this podcast too, moving off that path, is all about taking action, right? So let's talk about a couple of action items that our listeners can take. I would say action item number 1, Micah, is one that you already mentioned, which would be to take your revenue from the prior quarter and divide it by the number of clients that you have. Really figure out how many clients do you actually have, households, and what is your revenue per client, your average revenue per client. Don't tell me it's 1% or 1.5%, whatever the number is. Tell me what it actually is.
Jarvis, I'm snickering over here because when I want to know your total clients, that includes your exceptions, right?
Yes.
Don't say, oh, well, I have 70 ideal clients. That's not what I asked. I asked, what was your total number of clients you have? 312. Okay, well, that's a little bit bigger than 70, right? So what are those numbers? I love that. Do the time exercise. Right? Action item number 2 is sit down and be intentional about this, whether you're solving for revenue, you're solving for number of households, or you're solving for time, right? Those are the 3 big things that we can solve for. We walked through this just really quickly, but we walked through these examples. It's just basic math. Sure, it's algebra, but it's basic algebra, right? Basic math that you can figure out.
Yeah, and by the way, this is something that we do for our Invictus members on a regular basis. It is very difficult to do on your own if you've not done it before because those blind spots are so pervasive. Now, that would lead to action item number 3. Start to try to identify what your blind spots is. Now, this might be an exercise that can't actually be done on your own. You probably need someone to help you with this, but look for anywhere where you say, I can't, I should, it has to be this way, it can't be this way, they're cheating, I'm doing something different, whatever those excuses are. Whenever that happens, write that down, like literally write it down on a piece of paper and try to quantify it. Hey, I can't see as many clients as Matt and Micah because I provide real service. Okay, write that one down. What does that mean to provide real service? And what is it that you think you're doing that we're not doing? And go ahead and send that over to us just for fun.
Yeah, would absolutely love that. Jarvis, as always, it's a blast. Listeners, thank you guys so much. You made it this far. You know what to do next. Give us 5 stars. Send this out. We have a mission to help grow and transform this industry. We can only do it with your help. And until next time, happy planning.
Happy planning.
Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice.